Hello everyone, thanks so much for coming along today. It's so nice to see a full room. This is so exciting for me because I'm here with Rescue Not Retail. We're like a really super small kind of new campaign. We kicked off sort of at the beginning of last year, and we were sort of created because of a vacuum or like a gap. So it's myself, Polly over here, everyone say hi. Shakira over there, everyone say hi. And we all kind of found each other through a shared interest or concern for animals in the pet trade. It's not something that we'd seen being discussed within the animal rights and vegan movement, of which we're all already a part of. And yeah, it was kind of, it felt very necessary. And I don't know about the others. I mean, Shakira's been doing amazing work in this for years, which hopefully you all know about. If not, go and check out her work. And Polly had been doing like lots of writing and kind of research on the pet trade. I kind of came into this through, I worked at a pet shop when I was a teenager. And yeah, I don't know about the others, but I certainly did not want to lead a campaign. That's not really like, I always say I'm a natural born follower. I'm not a leader. I'm not particularly organized. I was like, I'm not the right person to do this. So at kind of vegan events and stuff in 2024, Vegan Camp Out and the Vegan Party Conference and kind of markets and events, I was going around everyone and I was like, will you do anything about the pet trade? Are you doing any kind of pet trade campaigns? What about pet shops? And spoke to all these different people. And everyone was like, oh, no, sorry, we don't have capacity for that. We don't really know much about that issue. And it got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm going to have to do it. But luckily found these amazing other wonderful women who, we're taking it on together, which is hard work because we don't have loads of time today, so I'm going to talk mainly about what we're doing with Rescue Not Retail rather than the whole issue of the pet trade, because it's a massive issue. It's a huge industry. There's so many different facets to how animals are exploited and suffer within the pet trade. It's more than I could possibly explain within half an hour. So I'm going to try and talk to you about what we're doing, and hopefully through that you'll kind of get a picture of this issue and some of the ways that we can start trying to tackle it. So I've already kind of explained this a little bit, but who are we? So we're Rescue Not Retail. Me, Polly, Shakira and Laura, we're 4 people, a little tiny team. We have no money, no time because we all do other jobs, so we all kind of like fit this into our busy schedules. But luckily, we're supported by amazing volunteers around the country. So we've managed to build up a network of local groups. It's very much on a grassroots level right now. People going out, visiting their local pets at homes, taking leaflets, giving out leaflets, talking to people about the pet trade. So I think we've got a network of about 100 volunteers now. We had a week of action in December last year, and we had 20 actions happening within the space of a week, which was really super cool, and we were super proud of that and everyone who got involved. So the level of support that we've received from this campaign already has been incredible. And I think it just kind of goes to show that although it's an issue that there is like a general lack of knowledge. I've learned so much about this within the past year of kind of researching and looking into things. Every day I learn new stuff about this industry that's kept so hidden from us. But I think that it's something that people see is needed and people are very happy to get involved with, which is very reassuring because I think at the start we were worried that no one would care and that no one would get it. But we've been proven wrong in the best way. This is Polly, who is here and was doing a talk in this very spot last year, which is really exciting. Again, it was the only talk. So Polly and Shakira's were the only talks about pet animals at VARC last year. I've just been to Manda's amazing talk about rabbits in law, and we've had Shakira's amazing talk yesterday, and now I'm here. So we've got 3 talks about the pet trade animals this year. So we're slowly getting there. Hopefully, in years to come, the schedule will be packed talking about these kinds of animals as well. And then in the bottom corner, this is Rescue Not Retail US. So we now have a team in LA. It's the amazing Justine Block, who's been campaigning to get animals, pet animals included in legislation, and they were working on a ban of the retail sale of animals in West Hollywood, and they actually won that. So they're now moving on to trying to get a ban of the retail sale of animals in the whole of LA, which will be amazing, obviously, if they get that. And this was a recent Petco protest, and it was a collaboration between DXE, Rescue Not Retail US, and I think a couple of other groups as well, which is really, really cool. So we're officially international, which is amazing. So that's kind of who we are, but what are we doing? So the reason why we exist is because of all the animals that are caught up in the pet trade. And I think one of the main issues with these animals is kind of weird. There's a bit of a contradiction. So put your hands up if you've got a local pet shop. Keep your hand up if you've been into that local pet shop. Yeah. Keep your hand up if they sell live animals in that pet shop. So we all have access to these spaces. We can go in there and we can actually directly see the animals that are being affected by this industry. They're right there. And oftentimes, they're in our homes. These are the animals that people are connecting with the most while they're alive, while they're building actual relationships with them. But unfortunately, these relationships are often not beneficial to the animals whatsoever. A lot of the common care practices that we see with pet animals, particularly species that aren't cats or dogs, although cats and dogs have a whole host of issues within their care themselves, but other species, particularly exotic species like small mammals, reptiles, birds, invertebrates, and fish, the care that they're receiving is unbelievably subpar. And even just our understanding of these animals is unbelievably subpar. They're very, very misunderstood. And even good homes are not meeting their most basic needs a lot of the times. And that's just a consequence of these animals being kept in captivity. They're wild animals, essentially. So even, a hamster, a Syrian hamster, we all think of a little cute fluffy hamster, and you wouldn't necessarily see that animal as a wild animal. But they are. They exist in the wild right now. Actually, they're critically endangered in the wild. And they were only first held in captivity in the 1940s. It's been less than 100 years that these animals have been kept domesticated. I also find it difficult. I mean, I'm not a scientist and I'm not an expert in language or anything. And I don't fully understand the definitions, really. I've tried to, but it's really complicated. But I personally would argue that apart from cats and dogs, maybe rabbits, maybe guinea pigs, maybe rats and mice, a lot of these animals aren't actually domesticated. They're captive animals, but a lot of their wild and instinctive behaviours remain, and yet we're keeping them in small enclosures in our houses. They still want to run, they still want to fly, they still want to burrow, they still want to climb, and yet so often we deny them of these most basic needs and behaviours that are written into their biology. The other issue, so although they're right there, they're in our society, we see them practically every day. They're not so much hidden like animals, in the laboratories or in farms that are farming them for food, but they disappear. So once an animal enters a private home, we never see that animal again. They're not regulated. People can do whatever they want to these animals once they're in their houses, and there's nothing we can really do about it. You can only report or flag concern for an animal if you can see something bad happening to them, and yet we don't see them. So this is a major issue. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions if you're including, fish, of which there are hundreds of millions being traded in the UK. There's millions, hundreds of millions of animals that we just don't know what's happening to them at the hands of humans. It's very worrying, very concerning. And especially when you start digging into kind of looking at what these animals' care requirements actually are and how common it is for those animals to be kept in an appropriate way, then you realise that there are hundreds of millions of animals that are loved and cared for that are actually essentially being tortured every day because of being kept in tiny enclosures, not being fed the appropriate diets, not able to move, not able to run, being kept alone when they require companionship. I can't imagine that kind of existence. And these are the animals that we're supposed to be connecting with more than any others, and yet it's still so easy for them to be mistreated. So it's a big problem. And we were like 4 little people who were like, we need to do something about this. Where on earth do we start? And it was actually kind of an easy answer. We're starting here. Has anyone ever been to a Pets at Home? Yeah. I used to love going into Pets at Home. When I was a kid, like, I love little animals. And so I used to love going in and be like, oh, looking at all the cute little hamsters and guinea pigs and everything. And then I don't know if it was like a flick of a switch or slowly I started, instead of going in and being like, oh, look at this cute little rabbit, look at this cute little rat, I actually started going in and feeling very horrified, because you can walk into a Pets at Home and without a doubt see at least one instance of animal distress or animal suffering every single time. And they're right there on display. And almost the most horrifying thing is we've been visiting loads of Pets at Homes. We conduct like investigations and we document these signs of distress and sometimes death of animals on display in these shops. And there was, it's very common to see the gerbils and the hamsters in particular scratching desperately at the corners of the tanks. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys have probably seen it before. It's really, really common. And that's basically because they're a burrowing species. They feel safe when they're deep down in the ground, and yet in these Pets at Home displays, they're given about that much bedding, and they're in bright lights, and there's people staring at them all day. So they're basically trying to get underground. They're trying to hide. They can't, so they just desperately scratch. And I was stood there watching this, I think they were a gerbil, almost in tears because they looked so visibly distressed and terrified. And a parent and a child came and was looking at them as well and were laughing and going, ha, look at him, that's so funny. And for me, that's almost worse. Like, obviously not really worse than the suffering, but the fact that there's just no connection. And those same people could then buy that animal and take them home, and they can't even connect with the most obvious display of distress and suffering, and yet they're then going to be responsible for that animal for the rest of their life and everything that animal needs and wants. It's very, it gives me the ick. But yeah, so there were many reasons why we decided to target Pets at Home as our first kind of campaign as Rescue Not Retail, and made this little spider diagram of just some of the things. And we've learned a lot about this company as well. So they are rated the 25th most successful company in the UK. And that's, along the lines, the same list as like Tesco's and Sainsbury's and Morrison's and, banks and everything. So 25th top UK company. They're big boys. They have over 450 stores across the UK. I think the number's at about 460 now. They opened a couple more last week. They have little to no vetting when people go in and buy animals. And actually, we speak to a lot of Pets at Home employees, and I've tried to narrow down whether there is actually a procedure. Have they got a written list of questions to ask people and a written list of reasons why they should refuse a sale? And it doesn't exist. It's basically left up to employee discretion. And they're not hiring animal welfare experts, they're hiring children. So obviously a lot of these employees mean very well, and there are some people who really, really care about animals who work at Pets at Home. We've come up with this little motto that no one hates Pets at Home as much as Pets at Home employees, because it's often people who love animals who go and get a job there, like I did when I was 16. I went and got a job at a pet shop because I love the animals. And actually the experience is harrowing, and a lot of these employees are quite traumatized. So but they don't have the knowledge that's needed to sell a highly complex, sensitive animal to someone who just fancies a hamster for their kid. So yeah, there's little to no vetting there. Pets at Home have very comfortable relationships with animal charities and government. The RSPCA is a corporate partner. They have really good relationships with local authorities. They have relationships with the Ornamental Fish Trade Association and the Reptile Trade Association. They have their fingers in the government pies when they're making new regulations and licenses for the pet trade. Actually, I was scrolling through the new animal welfare strategy that was announced a few months ago. And in the companion animal section, there's a lovely little note there. I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but it's about reducing regulations and limiting the amount of paperwork that pet shops have to do so that there's less regulation for pet shops. So I'm like, how is this in the animal welfare strategy? Like, how is this protecting animals? You're actually removing protection for animals. And I obviously can't confirm this, but I have no doubt that these guys had something to do with that. They have influence over government changes regarding pet animals, that's, very linked. They're a big part of writing new licenses and legislation. So there is a good code of practice for rabbits, which it is great. It lists a lot of really good stuff for rabbits. It's not mandatory, so Pets at Home don't follow the good code for practice that they helped write. But yeah, they have a lot of influence. They're self-regulating for fish, so like I said, they're part of the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association, OATA, which is a self-regulating body. So although every Pets at Home is licensed under their local authority, for fish, you basically can't do anything. It's kind of like this primary authority scheme. Shakira will be able to tell you all about this, having to deal with fish welfare cases that literally go nowhere because you actually can't report it to anyone. They have their own registered charity called the Pets Foundation. If you've been into a Pets at Home recently, you might have seen they have an adoption centre in the very back corner, hidden away. So you have the animals for sale at the front. In the very back corner, you'll have the adoption animals. Now, these are animals that people might have brought back because they can't keep them anymore. But actually, often, it's animals that are essentially reduced. So they're old stock that couldn't sell on the shop floor, and then they'll move them into the adoption centre, sometimes move them to other stores' adoption centres to then sell. And all that money kind of goes into the Pets Foundation charity, which then they donate to rescues. But it's half-hearted if you're going to donate a bit of money to the rescues that you're filling up with the animals that you're selling. It's kind of like a humane-washy sort of, it feels like they're doing their bit. They're, oh yeah, we help out rescues, it's fine. We can carry on selling 150,000 small animals a year. Doesn't matter because we donate a bag of food every so often. And of course, they sell live animals. So Pets at Home is now the only big pet retailer that still sells animals. The last one, other than Pets at Home, was Jolly's. They are a much smaller business in comparison. They have 100 stores around the UK, and up until around Easter last year, they were still selling live animals, but then they stopped. Woohoo! So yeah, it felt like an obvious target, basically, for many reasons. So some of the things that we've been doing, we've taken on sort of like a pressure campaign approach to Pets at Home. It feels slightly easier to do pressure campaigning with them because they're one company. There's 450 stores. Pretty much everyone will have a local Pets at Home. We can do some really good on-the-ground grassroots campaigning. So we can also do things like leaving them reviews. They're a big company. They value their public image, so we can do our bit to chip away at that. We've been getting some press with our demos and outreach. We managed to write an op-ed for LBC, and they had an hour-long debate, which was really cool. We've been documenting the signs of distress and doing test purchases and rescues when possible, although it's quite tricky with Pets at Home. But yeah, we've been slowly chipping away, and it feels kind of winnable. They've been ignoring us as much as they can, but obviously as one company there's only so much they can take, and if we all group together and we really, really go hard on them, they're going to have to back down eventually. The animal sales as well, it seems like they don't really make a lot of profit on them. They're kind of a tool to get people through the door and a tool to then sell the other. You know, if you sell someone a hamster, you've essentially bought yourself a loyal customer because they're going to keep coming in for the bedding, they're going to keep coming in for the food. But there are alternatives to that. They could partner with local rescues and display animals nearby who need a home and offer some kind of discounts or deals if you've adopted an animal from a local rescue. So there are real solutions, positive solutions. It's just getting them to listen. Obviously as well, this is just part of a small part, and there's loads of things we can do after we win. When we do get a pet home to stop selling animals, there's loads more that we can go on to do. So we're doing little bits to try and tackle the global industry as well, and that's mainly raising awareness. So going to kind of vegan and pet animal events and talking. We also have a pet shop investigation guide. I have one paper copy, but you can download it on the website as well. And that's basically a tool so that anyone can go into your local pet shop and get some really, really valuable evidence. Anyone can be an investigator, and it's in a public place, so it's not very scary. We've also, like I say, been working with employees and getting some really valuable insights from inside the industry as well, which is really cool. Finally, here's just a few things that you guys can do if you want to help out, if you want to get involved. There's honestly so many ways that you can help. You can join our week of action. So next week, Pets at Home's new CEO is starting his job on the 30th of March. And we want to make sure that he gets the message on his first day. So we're planning to go meet him at Pets at Home HQ, but you can also go to your local Pets at Home, hand in our open letter that's signed by Chris Packham, Joanna Lumley, Dale Vince, Peter Egan, and 60 plus vets, rescues, and charities and organisations. You can literally print that off our website and go hand it into your local Pets at Home and ask them to pass it higher up. I've got some leaflets and some stickers and some resources that you can come and grab. Just go stick them all over your local Pets at Home. It's just these little things that's going to slowly chip away. You can investigate your local pet shops. The evidence is really, really important, and in some cases you might document illegal activity that can then be reported, which is obviously very important. And we can support you if you did manage to capture anything that you want to report, we can support you with that. And almost most importantly, just talk about pet animals. We don't talk about them enough. They're disappearing animals in our society, and they need people speaking up for them. It's a difficult conversation to have because not many people want to imagine a world without pets. But in reality, that's a very, very distant future where there might not be animals that need to be rescued. Right now, we're in a rescue crisis. There's literally no excuse to be buying animals. So we all just need to talk about it, basically. We really want to grow this as a movement, and I believe that we can do that. So thank you, everyone.